I wanted to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. We are really thrilled to have you join us for our last Climate Week webinar. We've had a series of 5 this week, and we are really thrilled to be able to end on an important conversation. So thank you all for being here today. My name is Furhana Husani. I am the Director of Programs and Climate Initiatives at Waterfront Alliance. Waterfront Alliance is a US-based nonprofit organization with a growing alliance of more than 1,100 partners that focuses on environmental and economic development and bringing about real change to shorelines, waterfronts, and coastlines across the nation and in the New York, New Jersey region. For Climate Week, Waterfront Alliance has been centering critical climate resilience issues facing New York City through a series of webinars, roundtable discussions, exhibits, panels, as well as coastal cleanups. We welcome you to visit our website to learn more about our remaining events this week, which we have a few still. Today's webinar is entitled Weaving Greenways, Creating Resilient and Connected Communities. As we face the dual challenges of climate change and urban inequity, Greenways offer a powerful opportunity, not just for mobility and recreation, but for resilience, healing, and connection. Today's panel brings together leaders from government, advocacy, planning, and community organizing to explore how we can build greenways that truly serve all New Yorkers. I am so honored to introduce to you, all of you today, our panelists. Chauncy Young has been an education organizer since 2004, contributing to various initiatives and coalitions aimed at improving schools in District 9 and across New York City. He has held leadership roles in multiple organizations, coordinated significant campaigns, and is also the coordinator of the Harlem River Working Group, focusing on environmental quality and accessibility of the Harlem River. Chauncy also serves as the co-chair for the New York City Greenways Coalition. As a parent and resident of the Highbridge neighborhood, Chauncy remains committed to enhancing education quality and community well-being. Hunter Armstrong is the executive director of the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative, where he calls on nearly 2 decades of experience improving public spaces and the public realm in New York City. Hunter also serves as the co-chair with Chauncy of the New York City Greenways Coalition. Most recently, he was Deputy Director of Development and Communications at the Natural Areas Conservancy, a park nonprofit that stewards New York City's Nature Trails program. He has a master's degree in urban and environmental planning from the University of Virginia and a certificate in nonprofit management from Columbia University. Thank you for being here, Hunter. Laura Shepard serves in the Queens Borough President's Office, bringing years of experience in sustainable transportation, community advocacy, and urban planning. Formerly a Queens organizer for transportation alternatives and chair of the Environment, Parks, and Recreation Committee on Queens Community Board 2, she has led efforts to improve street safety, expand green infrastructure, and engage residents in shaping equitable public policy. In her current role, she continues to champion climate resilience and inclusive mobility across Queens. Sofia Barandiaran is the New Jersey and New York Greenway manager at the East Coast Greenway Alliance, where she leads regional efforts to develop, advocate for, and maintain the 3,000-mile walking and biking tour connecting cities from Maine to Florida. An urban planner with a focus on sustainable transportation and environmental justice, Sofia supports communities across New Jersey and New York in building out transformative greenway infrastructure. She previously worked at AECOM and the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, and holds degrees from Williams College and Rutgers University. Sofia also serves on the steering committee of the New York City Greenways Coalition, co-chairing its equity and outreach subcommittee. Thanks for being here, all of you. We are really excited to have this conversation with all of you today and excited for the representation from the New York City Greenways Coalition. Before we jump in, we'd love to just sort of launch a poll to get a sense of your familiarity of the New York City and the New York City Greenways. And that way we can sort of craft our responses, and the panelists can craft their responses based on your answers. So I'm just going to launch this poll. There will be 2 questions. The first question is, how familiar are you with New York City and its 5 boroughs? And the second question is, if you live here, which borough are you from? We'll keep this up. We have about 70% participated, which is really great. Okay. We're seeing that most people are very familiar or somewhat familiar with New York City and its 5 boroughs. And the majority of people who are joining us today are from Brooklyn. And Manhattan and Queens are tied for second. So that's very exciting. Thank you all for being here. And I'll share the results. All right. Great. And with that, I would love to start with our first question. To start us off, could all of you help us set the stage by explaining what the Greenways are and how we should be thinking about them in today's urban context? Sofia, I'll actually turn to you first, just to get some of your thoughts.
Thank you, Furhana. And I believe we have some slides to share that can help us with this. So while Furhana is pulling these up, I'll start. Oh, thank you. Greenway is a word that can mean a lot of different things to different people. It evokes something green, a route that you travel on. But there's a lot of ambiguity in there, and it can be very context dependent. So the New York City Greenways Coalition has come up with this shared definition of Greenway that we think applies in the New York City context. It's a little bit lengthy, but I'll just go ahead and read it. A greenway in New York City is a linear public space that spans communities and links neighborhoods, parks, job centers, and other destinations. A greenway provides abundant space for people walking, biking, running, rolling, or not moving at all. People of all ages and abilities should feel welcomed on New York City's greenways and be safely protected from automobiles by permanent physical separation. A greenway connects people to their environment using ecological elements such as trees and/or restored waterfront access. So, as you all see, there's a lot in here, and greenways are multifaceted. There's a lot that they are trying to achieve, and they hit on elements of transportation, recreation, public health, open space, environmental justice. One thing that, and we're going to speak to all of those elements, one thing that makes greenways unique as transportation and recreation infrastructure is their connectivity. Greenways, unlike some other types of biking and walking infrastructure, should be connective over relatively long distances. And what a long distance means can depend on the context. So the East Coast Greenway is nationwide. Other greenways in New York City span a portion of a borough or connect multiple boroughs. And ultimately, in the New York City context, the goal is for greenways from a transportation perspective to be completely safe off-street routes that form a network connecting all 5 boroughs. And that really gets at this point here of greenways being for people of all ages and abilities, and I should add from all backgrounds, of all genders, Whereas some other walking and biking infrastructure can be exclusive to people who are confident mixing with traffic. Greenways are really something that you should be able to enjoy with your kids, with your grandparents. That, unlike some bike lanes, which see strong majority of users being men, greenways should be something that people of all genders feel comfortable using. There are a lot of other aspects of greenways that you see captured here, and I will turn to Laura next to talk a little bit about some of those other aspects of greenway design.
Absolutely. So greenways are essential for expanding the reach of our transit network. In New York City, we are relatively well served by our subways, our buses, commuter rail, but not everyone in every neighborhood has this quick access, and we do have a lot of people with very long commute times. Large swaths of the outer boroughs are not served by subways at all, which means that people have to often walk to bus stops, wait a long time for a bus, and then these buses are snarled by vehicle traffic as they approach transit hubs like Flushing or Jamaica. We often think of bicycle times as a good sort of cheat sheet is 5 miles at a relaxed pace takes about half an hour. And so often this is competitive, and expanding greenways gives people access to these hubs, or even just to their nearest bus stop or a commuter rail station that can really unlock a lot of educational and employment opportunities just by making it easy to get out of their to get out of one's immediate neighborhood. Greenways also expand the reach of our park system. A lot of people do not live within a 5-minute walk of a park. But when greenways sort of radiate out into the surrounding communities, someone might live 5 minutes from a greenway that would take them into a major park. Yeah, they just expand the world for people who don't have access to vehicles for a number of reasons, or choose to live a vehicle-free life because of environmental concerns. But some of these factors are affordability, age, ability, and this perpetuates some inequities. So greenways are an equalizer. And yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Hunter to speak more about the benefits of greenways.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Well said. And Furhana and Waterfront Alliance, we really appreciate your sponsoring this panel and really highlighting this issue. And something that really motivates me in my work with Brooklyn Greenway Initiative is—
Hunter, you're on mute. I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Whoops. Okay, thanks. The ability, something that really excites me in my work as executive director of Brooklyn Greenway Initiative and as co-chair of the New York City Greenways Coalition, is the ability for greenways to really address a multitude of societal and environmental issues, some of which we're obviously starting to talk about in this panel. And I think two key areas where greenways can be part of very large solutions is with climate change and climate resilience. As we've been discussing, if you're walking on a greenway, if you're riding a bike, if you're going for a run, you are not producing an excess amount of carbon, unlike pretty much every other mode of transportation here in New York City and certainly elsewhere. So it's certainly, we say it's like the cleanest and the safest and most fun and greenest way to get around town and 100% the most eco-friendly. I think something that we want to sort of highlight even more is that when a greenway is built to the standard that Sofia was describing earlier, where it includes green space, where it's adequate for multiple types of transportation, then it really sort of maximizes its potential to not only reduce carbon use, but to cool cities, to absorb stormwater, to create opportunities for biodiversity through green space. So that's why we feel so strongly about the definition of greenways and making sure that they are built adequately for a community's needs, and that they include green space. And I, of course, am here representing Brooklyn, so glad to see so many folks from Brooklyn joining this call. And I think a really good example of how a greenway, when it's constructed, can be beneficial for climate resilience and for sustainable transportation, you need look no further than the ongoing discussion in Red Hook, which is a community on the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway. Unfortunately, the Greenway has not been fully built out in Red Hook, but part of it, as was just announced about a few weeks ago, part of it will be built as part of kind of flood protection in Red Hook. So the Greenway will be incorporating flood walls. So there are multiple types of infrastructure that a community like Red Hook needs to address that. It will also be absorbing stormwater and flooding, in ways that we saw the extreme need for that during times like Superstorm Sandy. That's also been part of the discussion of the Brooklyn Marine Terminal planning, which of course has been very much in the news this week. An upgraded greenway with more green space and more capacity is being incorporated into that plan as well. I think Red Hook is another really interesting example because there are a lot of delivery warehouses in that community, and that puts an undue strain on that community for truck traffic reaching the rest of the city and the rest of Brooklyn. And there definitely is a kind of growing and evolving discussion and policy approach to moving more of those deliveries, more of that truck traffic onto micromobility, onto cargo bikes, and having more deliveries come to New York City via its waterways through the city's Blue Highways program. And so we're really looking, we're asking the city as part of that consideration to expand our bike and pedestrian infrastructure to accommodate all of these different needs that a greenway is I think well suited to help advance for New York City. So super exciting work to hopefully help improve the environment through better greenways. And I think Chauncy will be speaking after me.
All right, sorry about that. I trying to get my mic off. So afternoon all, Chauncy Young from the Harlem River Coalition, and so excited to be with you all today. I'm actually standing in Van Cortlandt Park at the New York Empire States Trail, and sort of following what Hunter was just sharing, we were able to get New York City to complete its long desired agreement with the community to complete the Putnam Trail, which will connect to the Harlem River Greenway. And part of that was really around green infrastructure. Superstorm Ida, if folks might remember, caused terrible death in Queens. It also caused flooding throughout the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. The Deegan Expressway floated cars, and those cars that were being floated floated from a daylighted Tibbetts Brook. And that brook was part of our infrastructures. We build our cities out. We did so with very little thought and care about, the water infrastructure and the flood infrastructure. And so the Greenway that's been built is, well, it's in the process of being built here, is going to also include a daylighted Tibbetts Brook, which will help cut down on the combined sewage overflow, and thus address huge amounts of flooding. And the Harlem River Coalition and many of our advocates, as well as many of the advocates of the New York City Greenway Coalition, have been advocating that greenways are opportunities for green infrastructure, that are, instead of just putting down pavement, we can be looking at ways to make that be porous pavement, and look for ways that this green and gray infrastructure can be a support to our community, both improving access, and also in improving our lived environment. So we're really excited to be a part of this process, because greenways can really transform our communities for the better. And I'll talk later about my personal experience, with my daughter traveling on greenways, which made getting to school possible, so I think it's so exciting what we can do with greenways, and really can reshape this city for the better.
Amazing. Thank you so much, all of you, for providing that amazing context. Sophia, I'd actually like to go back to you to share a little bit more about some of the examples of greenways. I know you had a couple of pictures that you'd like to share.
Yes, so this ties in well with the next topic we're going to talk about, which is recent progress on greenways. I have 3 examples just to show you guys a little bit as we're talking about what greenways are and the breadth of what different types of infrastructure could be considered greenways. Recently opened greenway projects in New York City. This is the East Midtown Esplanade, considered by many to be this gold standard grand greenway project that you can see built out here over the river next to the FDR on the east side of Manhattan. You can see here where it ends. So the southern end at 60th Street is going to connect to the next phase, the UN Esplanade, which will in turn create a connected greenway along with pieces that will be built further north along the Harlem River. Will eventually create a connected greenway along the entire length of the East River in Manhattan. This is an example that we often point to as a gold standard of what we would like to see along along several of our waterways across New York City. Next, we have Starlight Park. The most recent phase of this project was also completed in 2023. This is in large part thanks to really strong advocacy from the Bronx River Alliance, which has been working to restore access to the Bronx River, and also to other community members in the Bronx. This is another example where a waterway that has long been polluted and inaccessible to the public through greenway activation is now being restored to ecological health, but also as a community space and as a connector that can help people get around, get to work, and bike and walk recreationally with their families. Next photo. This here is Depot Place. You can see High Bridge in the background. This was completed earlier this year. Looks very different from the other greenway photos I just showed you. So this is where the definition of greenways can get a little bit contentious. This New York City considers a greenway. I think, as you can see by some of the definition that we've described of what we think greenways are that have, ample bicycle and pedestrian space for people not moving at all, and green infrastructure. This isn't quite there yet, but also very critical as safety infrastructure. And we have, questioned and pushed the city on why do some areas like the East Midtown Esplanade that we just showed you get really, amazing grand green infrastructure over the river's edge, whereas this, which is part of the Harlem River Greenway, is being implemented mostly as an on-street plan. And it's complicated because we do want to see those on-street improvements, and they're able to be implemented much more quickly. But one of our goals in the New York City Greenways Coalition ultimately is to see that same quality of green infrastructure that is restoring access to the waterfront, that is promoting environmental justice across all 5 boroughs. And Chauncy, I don't know if you want to add anything. Chauncy has been the champion of the Harlem River Greenway. So, but yes, go ahead,
Yeah,
Chauncy.
I mean, I could jump in for a second, Sophia. Thank you. Yeah, and it's been a real goal of the entire New York City Greenway Coalition, is that it's essential that we have equitable greenway construction throughout the city. The South Bronx, where I live, is still the poorest congressional district in the country, and yet we should be focusing on ensuring that community members in the South Bronx as well as in South Brooklyn have access to greenways, off-street greenways, and especially if we're looking at the overall health of our city and of our communities. The Bronx is 62 out of 62 counties out of the state of New York in terms of health disparities. We are the least healthy county in the state of New York. And so we feel like it behooves the city to provide that off-street recreational space where families can get out, exercise, and prove their health and wellness. So it's so essential. We are frustrated as much as we're excited about the Greenway being done. We want to see that future Greenway be on the Harlem River waterfront, because as I mentioned before, that does make a huge difference to feel safe as a family member, as someone who's less comfortable cycling, to be off street and not be concerned about traffic makes all the difference.
I really appreciate these local examples, Sophia, and Chauncey, and thank you all again for your incredible advocacy and your work to make the greenways more equitable across the city. Sophia, would love to jump into the bigger picture, like like you were sort of going into. What kinds of progress have you seen in recent years toward sort of building a more connected greenway?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about some recent projects that have been developed. I think now I want to talk a bit about the broader planning effort that the city has been undertaking. This is the Greater Greenways Plan, which was released earlier this summer. The New York City Greenways Coalition was deeply involved in advocating for the legislation that led to the creation of this plan. And that's a really good example of how greenway groups coming together across the city are able to move the city forward from doing kind of one greenway project at a time to really taking a comprehensive and holistic look at greenway planning across the city. This is greenway advocacy is an effort that has been going on for many decades in New York City. The previous greenway plan to this one was completed in 1994, so it's been a while. And is actually deeply tied to the formation of my organization. Our founding executive director, Karen Votava, worked at New York City DOT at the time and helped to create that plan. So there are a lot of threads that have been in development for a really long time, and many generations of advocates who have iteratively come up with these ideas and led to the creation of this plan. This plan is really significant because for the first time since 1994, it really maps out the entire greenway network as envisioned by the city, and identifies, as you can see, some of the gaps in the existing network, and also calls out, not in this map, but in other maps, all of the capital projects that are going on, several of the opportunities to expand the greenway network. And this is kind of a wonky thing, but also identifies. Oh, Chauncy, did you? Okay, great. It also identifies something as simple but really crucial as who owns and maintains each of the greenways. Some of our greenways in New York City, the three big agencies that own and maintain them are DOT, the Department of Transportation, the Parks Department, and EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. But there's a whole alphabet soup of agencies. There's Navy Yard, there's National Park Service, there's private greenways, and this plan really catalogs that in detail and maps out where each of those entities are, which is incredibly helpful as we try to expand them in a comprehensive way to reach that goal of creating a truly interconnected network, as I was mentioning before. Next slide. The city, so just released the Greater Greenways Plan, huge deal. EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, is now building on that plan to undertake a Greater Greenways implementation plan. So that plan is going to really look in more detail at where are the next corridors that the city wants to focus on implementing. They currently have a survey open, so this is a engagement opportunity for all of you. I encourage you to take that survey. I'm going to put a link to the website in the chat as well, in case that's easier for everyone. But sorry, I'm having some trouble. I'll do it in a second. So this is very much an ongoing effort, and something that the Greenways Coalition will be focused on in the next several years is, okay, we have the Greater Greenways Plan. Now, how can we implement it, and how can we implement it in a way that is equitable across the 5 boroughs? Next slide, I think, or perhaps not. Oh yeah, sorry. We changed the thing around, so that's the end of my slides, but I also wanted to mention the RAISE early action corridors. So this is something that has kind of gone hand in hand with the Greater Greenways Plan, and you'll see them mentioned in the Greater Greenways Plan. But the city is currently undertaking a planning process for 5 corridors in the outer boroughs that were funded through federal funding. The Harlem River Greenway, which we mentioned, has already begun being implemented, is one of them. Queens Waterfront Greenway, which I'm sure Laura will talk about more, is actively underway. And then the next ones to be implemented are the Staten Island North Shore Greenway, which is really, really exciting. Communities along the North Shore of Staten Island that have very, very limited access to open space and to walking and biking infrastructure. And the historic Brooklyn Greenway, and finally the South Bronx Greenway. So there's a lot of really great things happening across the city, and I think I won't go too much into them because I want to let my fellow panelists talk a little more about all those different components of Greenway planning. But we're really seeing a renaissance now and a new look at how can greenways form a connected network citywide.
Sofia, thank you so much for giving a very comprehensive look at what's happening around the city. Laura, would love to, as Sofia mentioned, would love to turn to you to get a better sense of what's happening in Queens and really sort of getting a sense of, you know, what are the greenways? How are they being built in a resilient and equitable way?
Absolutely. So in Queens, we've been actually pretty fortunate to inherit some wonderful legacy Greenway segments. A great example would be the Vanderbilt Motor Parkway, 3 miles in eastern Queens. It was actually built as the first highway for cars in North America. And then in the 1930s, Robert Moses turned it over to the Parks Department. And we have some lovely park paths in Forest Park. We have Joe Michael's Mile along the Cross Island Parkway, segments of the Jamaica Bay Greenway. But over the decades, not all greenways throughout the city have been maintained to the standards that they need to be to provide this connected, protected experience. an example of that would be State of Ocean Parkway with in Brooklyn with you know, its notorious bumps and tree root issues. But as people are using and advocating for greenways, we've been managing to get some of our greenways better maintained, like the Vanderbilt Motor Parkway was repaved, but also we still have glaring gaps in the greenway network because there are dangerous streets that people have to cross to access them, or even highway on off ramps. And it's taken work to address this, and we're still addressing it. In some cases, it's through building on-street protected bike lanes, like the Northern Boulevard protected bike lane, which makes it possible for people in Bayside and Douglaston to get to Joe Michael's Mile safely, but also much broader plans like the Queens Waterfront Greenway. We have some greenway segments in Western Queens, in Long Island City and Astoria. Much of that, well, in Long Island City, it's new. For the most part, these greenways were developed as Long Island City has transitioned from industrial to residential. We have segments like in Hunters Point Park, and Long Island City and Jamaica are actually going through rezonings currently and ensuring that greenways are part of the vision and part of the recommendations for the rezoning has been a major effort, because what we've learned is that we get what we build for, and when we envision future, we have to ensure that we're building ways for people to walk and bike and access transit and not just drive. Yeah, so the Queens Waterfront Greenway is one of the Ray's early action corridors. It's currently making its way through the public engagement process. So current efforts are really about getting people to talk about their experiences now and what stops them from walking and biking in their neighborhoods, what challenges they're encountering, and helping to incorporate that local knowledge to address the current challenges in the best possible way that can help the greatest number of people access parks and waterfront and transit and schools and whatever other destinations people are looking to go to, commercial corridors, and it's been exciting to see this movement.
Laura, I appreciate that. I think I really like the idea that we're incorporating community voices into a lot of the community-led planning that's happening in, especially along the Queens Greenway waterfront. And along the same lines, I know that Chauncy has been doing a lot of this kind of work as well. And Chauncy, you've seen firsthand the challenges of community-led planning. Would love to hear, similar to sort of what Laura shared, would love to hear some of the obstacles that you've encountered in being a longtime advocate for greenways, as well as what lessons may have emerged from those experiences.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Well, I mean, let me keep my hat on. It blocks the sun from y'all. I started as an advocate from the side of a parent. I've always been an active cyclist, and living in the Highbridge neighborhood of the Bronx. And my mom lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was very clear to me from a very early time in my stay in New York City is that, not all greenways, not all access to parks and open space and waterfront is equitable throughout the city. My mom lives right along Riverside Park, Riverside Drive, an incredible park, incredible greenway, the Hudson River Greenway, which is the most active greenway in the country. So there are people utilizing it for exercise, but a lot of people utilizing it for transportation, to get to school, to get to college, to get to medical appointments. Completely transformational. As I said, I live in High Bridge, which is a neighborhood named after the High Bridge, New York City's oldest standing bridge. And yet that bridge had been closed for 40 years, deemed unsafe, not necessarily the condition of the bridge, but unsafe for the community to use it because of dangers that could be occurred. So, these issues are huge. So when we advocated and achieved getting the High Bridge open, and when you're looking at Washington Heights and the Bronx, we have so many shared families, so it opened up, children to be able to visit their grandparents across the river in Manhattan. Safe paths for school, safe path to access the High Bridge pool in Manhattan, which is one of the largest parks pools in our area. So it really is an issue of equity, access, safety. But when we opened the High Bridge was when we created the Harlem River Working Group, which is now renamed as the Harlem River Coalition. And that was about access, right? You get over the High Bridge, you're over at High Bridge Park in Manhattan, which runs from 155th Street up to Dyckman Street. You have a beautiful Harlem River path that exists there. Later, there was a connection to the Hudson River Greenway, so a safe connection down Dyckman Street. All these community connections that made access for families and communities to be completely transformational. My daughter, as I said, I took this as a parent. My daughter, though, grew up for the first few years of her life in Manhattan in my mom's apartment on the Upper West Side. We moved to High Bridge when she was 3. We wanted to keep her in the schools that she had already been in on the Upper West Side, because we were both community organizers at the time, both my wife and I. So, we needed that social support of grandma to be able to pick up our daughter from school. And our daughter and I, from kindergarten on, I biked with my daughter to school from the Bronx down to 96th Street to PS 75, right off the Hudson River Greenway. So, from age 5 on, she was biking, first with a tag along, later on her own bike, and then later on her rollerblades. So she was actively biking, and then by the time she hit middle school, she was biking on her own to school. And that was all possible because of having the Hudson River Greenway. We have nothing like that in the Bronx this day. The 1993 Greenway plan that one of the organizations I sit on the board of, the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality, was one of the active participants in the 1993 Greenway plan. The plans for the Harlem River Greenway have existed since the 80s, since, the same time as the Bronx River Greenway and so many of our other city greenways, but it's the build out of those greenways that have not been done equitably. When we started this fight over 20 years ago, there was, so much of the waterfront was city owned. That is no longer the case. So much of that property has been purchased, been built up by developers, and we're still advocating to ensure that that public water space that we were part of advocating for, that 40-foot of waterfront access that's supposed to be for greenways, is really accessible for community members and just doesn't become open space for the residents that own the towers that have been built along the Harlem River. And this is, happening throughout the city. And it's something where we really need community members engaged with. Also with parks, we're planned with New York City Parks to build a boathouse and community gardens along the Harlem River waterfront. And the commissioner at the time, even though they paid for Star White House, an architect, landscape architect, to do the plan with us, when Star White House gave that plan to the city parks department, the city parks department said, no, we're not accepting this plan. This is too complicated for the waterfront. Yet communities across the city have gotten boat houses, have gotten, you know, incredible community spaces along the waterfront, but it was deemed at the time not acceptable for the Bronx, right? So there's a huge issue of equity that still exists to this day, and it's part of the reason why we need, you know, a coalition like the New York City Greenway Coalition and so many of our other coalitions to advocate for equitable park, you know, construction, development, greenway construction, and waterfront access. The entire stretch of the Harlem River waterfront, we do not have any public boating programs available for our community, although we've been advocating now for decades. I think we may be getting a permit next week, and that would be an incredible step and an incredible victory. But it really talks about how much pushing community members need to do, and how inequitable this city still is for so many New Yorkers.
Chauncy, really appreciate all of the work that you're doing to make the Bronx more equitable in terms of greenway and particularly waterfront access. Hunter, you've been doing this a lot in Brooklyn. As the executive director of Brooklyn Greenway Initiative, you helped to shape the city's most ambitious greenway projects. What have been the biggest challenges for you in terms of implementing and maintaining the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative or Brooklyn Greenway?
Yeah, thanks Furhana. And we actually have an aerial photo of Brooklyn. So if you could bring that up while I'm speaking about this. So, and I'll try to keep this relatively quick so we can have some time for questions. But the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway spans the entire waterfront of Brooklyn. So that's 26 miles. And a significant, so the vision is to have a continuous greenway along the entire waterfront. And there are significant gaps, significant unbuilt or underbuilt sections of the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway. I mentioned Red Hook earlier in this call. And so I think a real kind of frustration and something, that is repeated from what other panelists have said is just how long it takes for these this infrastructure, these greenways to be built. The Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway implementation plan for a large section of what we're looking at on the screen, a large section of the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, was created in 2012, and and we still have non-implemented sections of that now 13-year-old implementation plan. So I think a real challenge has been sort of the delays in moving from design and planning to actual implementation. And unfortunately, what that means is that we end up with a greenway that was designed many years ago and does not necessarily reflect the increase in cycling and increase in greenway use and other types of micromobility. So I think we're really pushing for more people to know what greenways are, know where they are, and then really join us in advocating for them. You may be using a greenway and you don't even know it. So I would consult the maps and the information that Sofia was talking about earlier. And if you don't think it's built to the standard that your community should have, then talk to your elected officials about that. Start calling into 311. So it's really important to sort of know where they are, know where they're planned for, and then let's all advocate for this to happen much more quickly. I think two other kind of points I'll mention is the multi-jurisdictional aspect of greenways, as we've discussed, is both a challenge and an opportunity. So, creating a kind of seamless experience between New York City DOT right-of-way and New York City Park right-of-way, two agencies with very different missions and very different resources. The average New Yorker doesn't care about those things, but you do see how they're kind of played out and how greenways are constructed. and how they're maintained. And I think the last issue in your question for Hannah was about maintenance. So I think greenways do reflect the issue here in New York City where sometimes we're good at building things. We're not always good about, finding the funding to maintain them and to keep them looking good. And unfortunately, greenways are very much in that category. Brooklyn Greenway Initiative, 10 plus years ago, helped shape legislation for something called the Adopt a Greenway Plan. And we had a legal maintenance agreement with the city of New York to provide snow removal and to provide other leaf removal, other forms of maintenance on the Greenway, horticulture. And that agreement had a lot of liability for our small organization and no funding attached to it. So it was kind of up to us to find funding to fulfill this agreement that was laid out in the Adopt a Greenway program. And we ultimately withdrew from the agreement. It was just too onerous and a little scary with the liability. And, I think the city can do a better job of identifying how it works with nonprofit partners. And I think they are revisiting this Adopt a Greenway program. I think Chauncy and some others have been looking at how to make this work for their community. So so exciting work, but certainly can be complicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. Thanks for going over so quickly the major challenges that you're seeing around the Brooklyn Greenway, but also in greenways in general, and particularly around the maintenance piece, which I think is something that is unfortunately always thought of as the last issue. With that, I would love to be able to just do a quick last question with all of you. We could do this as a lightning round to sort of just ask all of you to look ahead. If you could think of one transformative change in New York City's Greenway network over the next 5 years, what would it be and why? Would love to start with Laura.
Yeah. So there are so many possibilities to answer this question. I mean, we all absolutely want to see the rapid expansion and closing of the gaps and ways to accelerate the processes and do more, just build more simultaneously. One thing that would upgrade the quality significantly would be to enhance the protection that greenways have and separation from vehicles with bollards and other vertical measures in a lot of places to prevent incursions, especially where they're on street or close to streets. That would be significant. Another thing would be to rapidly expand City Bike to cover all 5 boroughs. Because the combination of greenways and bike share is incredibly powerful in terms of who can access. Anybody, like any tourist who just comes into New York City for a day would be able to fully unlock the potential of the Greenway network, and for residents to get around quickly, safely, and swiftly. That combination would be incredibly powerful.
Love the vision. I love it. Sofia.
I'll be super quick. I want to see the next mayoral administration majorly prioritize greenways, figure out how to get them built fast. That means ramping up staff capacity of folks working on greenways, figuring out the interagency issues and jurisdictional issues, just streamlining the entire process. And we have lots of ideas about how to do that, but I'll just leave it at that for now, since I know we're short on time.
And our 2 co-chairs, Chauncy, Hunter, would love to hear from you.
I'll go first. Yes to everything that's been said so far. I think my kind of quick response is an obvious one. We have a greenway system. We have more segments that will be built. Let's make sure people know about them. Make sure they're well identified, well cared for by the city, by surrounding communities, and well designed. But let's just make sure that they're identifiable.
Sorry for
Chauncy?
changing up the order on you, Hunter. um, I agree. I think we need to prioritize greenways in this next administration. And I think we need to continue to advocate for equitable planning and development of greenways for all.
Amazing. Okay, we're gonna try to get 2 questions in before we wrap up, and I'll just start with the first one. Regarding shared connected green spaces, how can greenways make the fundamental efficiency of cities more appealing to people living there as opposed to moving out to expand suburban sprawl with detached private lots? Any efforts to integrate community gardens, such as those often seen in Europe? Would love to open it up to the group and see if there's anyone that would like to take that question.
I just have one quick response to that. I think it's part of improving quality of life. And I think Chauncey's example is really helpful, where if we have a system where parents and people of all abilities feel comfortable getting around, hopefully independently, that I think takes a lot of strain off, parents who are chauffeuring their parents around suburbs, et cetera. So I think, kind of leaning into the ability for people to be independent and mobile in New York City, which we all know is possible.
Add to that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, my friend.
Of course. Greenways really traverse all sorts of urban contexts. A greenway can go from the denser parts of the city or transit hubs to more residential areas fairly quickly. And the idea is just to maintain the consistency and connectivity of the route. An example I like to think of is the Casino Corridor in Eastern Queens, which is getting upgraded through a process called Destination Greenways. Downtown Flushing is very dense, but just a few minutes on the Greenway gives Flushing residents access to all sorts of green and open space in like 5 different parks. And then the reverse is true. People who live further out, just a few minutes on the Greenway, and not only can they access the transit hub, but also all the institutions and economic opportunities. So yes, greenways are for everywhere. That's what it comes down to.
100%. I think greenways can really be seen as, and community gardens are a part of greenways, can be a part of greenways, and should be part of greenways, such as also children's playgrounds, parks, recreational spaces. All of these things are linked together by greenways and can be enhanced through greenways. My daughter was able to participate in Row, New York, because the Peter J. Sharp Boathouse is located on a greenway, and she could bike from middle school, up the Henry Hudson Greenway, the Hudson River Greenway to the Peter J. Sharp Boathouse along a greenway. So truly greenways can be transformational, and should be, and in many places throughout the city and around the world, they are. We'd love to see that grow and continue to expand.
Amazing. I was hoping to do one more question, but I think we're at time. And I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get all the questions here, but I do see that a lot of the questions were answered throughout the webinar itself. So I hope this was as informative for all of you in the audience as it was for me. Thank you to the audience for being here, and a huge thank you to our incredible panelists who are doing the hard work of making greenways accessible and equitable for all New Yorkers. Thank you all for your time today, and thank you all for continuing to do this incredible work with us. Looking forward to continuing this conversation, and I hope we get to see all of you soon.
Thank you so much, Furhana, and thank you all for coming.
Thanks for organizing and thanks
Thank
to
you.
everyone for attending.
Thanks, everyone.